The ashwood trees were still. It was just past dawn on Volcran, the fire world. A red sun pushed light across the jagged peaks, making the ground glow orange and gold. For weeks, the settlers in Ember Ridge had enjoyed calm skies. No seismic rumbles. No strange weather, no signs of danger. That morning, Commander Elise Marlowe stood on the southern tower of Watch Post 6. She sipped hot brew and watched the horizon, expecting another boring report from the outlying farms. Then she saw the smoke. Thin, gray, rising too early, from the wrong direction. She froze. Elise had lived on Volcran for 12 years. She knew every steam vent, lava flow, and cloud path. She knew where the volcanoes lay and when they roared. But this smoke didn't match anything natural. It came from the ashwood forest. And no fire should burn there not, unless someone started it. A voice crackled through her commander. "We have a survivor. Boy, he's badly burned." Her cup dropped. The metal clanged on the floor. She didn't wait for the lift. Ran 15 minutes later in the med bay. Elise stood over a shaking boy. His skin was scorched across his left side. His clothes were melted into his arm. The medics worked fast, spraying coolant foam and dermal regrowth. He couldn't speak, just trembled. But then his eyes opened, and he whispered a single word. Skyburners. The name hit like a hammer. Skyburners wasn't a name from Earth. It was dragon tongue, rarely used anymore. It referred to something that came from above and destroyed with flame. But dragons did not attack humans. That bond was sacred. She turned to Dr. Mavin. Did he say it clearly? Mavin nodded, pale. Yes, clear as day. Skyburners. Elise stepped back, mind racing. Only one thing made sense. It wasn't the dragons. It was something else. An hour later, Elise stood at the edge of the ashwood. The smoke had grown thicker. A breeze carried the scent of burning metal, not wood, not oil, but armor plating and tech gear. Of scouts hadn't returned. Neither had the drone she sent. Her wrist pad blinked. Static. Something was jamming comes inside the forest. Elise tapped her earpiece. All squads, this is Commander Marlowe. We're moving into Ashwood. Expect resistance. Unknown enemy. Possibly off-world. A keep tight formation. 20 soldiers followed her, armored and silent. They stepped into the smoke. The deeper they walked, the worse it got. Trees lay snapped in half, like someone had swiped them aside with a giant claw. Craters smoldered with strange green light. They passed 3 small farming bots, all melted into the dirt. Still twitched, trying to crawl forward with a half-burned limb. Then they found the first body, Private Juno, face down. Back open by something sharp and hot. His armor looked sliced clean through, but not by a plasma blade. It was curved. "Ma'am," Sergeant Core said, pointing. "More tracks. Not human. Not dragon either." Elise knelt for clawed feet. Heavy, wide spacing. No scales. No heat prints. Whatever left these tracks walked with weight. Purpose. Elise stared forward, heart sinking. They weren't alone anymore. 30 minutes in, they reached the crash site, a full human transport vehicle transport. 9X was crushed into the ground. Its front end burned and blackened, its hull torn open like paper. Next to it lay something far worse, a dragon, small, young, dead. Its wings were broken, its throat was cut, its golden eyes were open and staring. No dragon had died on Volcran. In nearly 100 years, Elise fell to one knee. Her hand trembled. Who would do this? Whispered KORR. No one answered then? Through the thick smoke came a new sound, deep and slow, like engines turning, but it wasn't a machine. It was breathing. A shape moved behind the trees. Elise raised her weapon. So did her team. But before, they fired. A voice echoed through the smoke. Not loud, but layered, like it was being spoken in 2 languages at once. You broke the pact. The smoke parted. A dragon stepped into view. Not just any dragon, an elder. Its body was covered in molten armor, its horns long and curled. Eyes burned like furnaces. Its scales shimmered like lava. Didn't speak again. It only stared at Elise. She lowered her gun. "We didn't break anything," she said, steady but respectful. "We were attacked. We lost people." Lost away. "Youngling, you're youngling." The dragon stepped closer, and smoke twisted around its wings. Then fire must answer fire. It lifted its head and roared not at Elise, but toward the mountains. Far away. Other roars answered. Dragons plural. Waking up back at the settlement, alarms rang. Scout towers burned. The sky filled with strange shadows. Ships not human, not. Dragon descended from orbit, black and silent. No emblems, no warnings. Just weapons. The Krill Empire had come. They did not declare war. They simply opened fire. But that was their mistake. Because Volcran wasn't just a colony. It was home to the last flame-bonded species in the galaxy. And now the dragons were awake. That night, from orbit, Krill scouts recorded unusual seismic readings. They dismissed them as tectonic activity. But deep below Volcran, in the molten caves, something ancient stirred. A voice older than Earth itself whispered, "You have touched. Fire ... now burn." The sky turned red, but not from the sun. At first, people at Ember Lake thought it was a storm. Lightning crackled far above, hidden behind thick clouds, but there was no thunder, just silence. Then the red glow sharpened, and shapes began to fall from the clouds dark. Metal spears spinning as they dropped fast toward the lakefront. Colony. The first impact shook the ground like an earthquake. The second flattened the southern watchtower. The third split the sky with fire. Commander. Elise Marlowe was still en route from Ashwood when her shuttle was thrown sideways by the shockwave. She gripped the straps and yelled at her pilot, "Get us down near the water!" But the pilot was already bleeding. A shard of metal had punched through the cockpit. Though Elise took the stick herself, she didn't wait for landing clearance. Touched down near the lake's edge. Ash and smoke filled the air. Civilians ran in every direction. Fence drones buzzed, helplessly jammed. The enemy had blocked comms, radar, and drone signals again. Lisa's earpiece was full of static. She jumped out of the shuttle and sprinted toward the emergency control tower. Halfway there, she saw 3 more enemy landers coming down black ovals. No lights, no sounds. Each one landed with a hiss of steam and unfolded like insect shells inside. Dozens of armored figures stepped out. Tall, thin, black-plated, carrying. Plasma carbines and some kind of spine launcher Elise had never seen. Kryll. They weren't just testing defenses anymore. They were here to take Volcran by force. Elise grabbed a dropped rifle and ran toward the flames. Near. The lakeside nursery school fire had trapped a group of families. The building's walls were melting from the heat. A baby screamed inside. Elise didn't hesitate. She charged in, holding her breath through smoke, yanked the door off its hinges, and dragged 3 people out. One of them, a girl, barely 5, looked up and whispered, "Why are the stars falling?" Elise didn't answer. She couldn't. That's when the first dragon appeared. The sky cracked. From the mountains behind Ember Lake. A roar swept across the land like thunder from the deep. Something huge passed overhead, trailing flames in its wake. The Krill looked up too late. A white-scaled dragon slammed into the center of the enemy landing zone. Its wings blew out. Shockwaves. Its breath turned air to liquid fire. 2 enemy ships. Melted on impact, Elise covered the girl and watched as the dragon twisted midair, grabbing an enemy with one claw and slamming it into the other. A dozen Krill disintegrated in the heat. The dragon roared again. But this time, it wasn't alone. 4 more shadows dove from the peaks, each a different color: red, gold, obsidian, and emerald. The dragons had come to Ember Lake, and they were furious. Inside the wreckage of one of the Krill drop pods, Admiral Traven stood watching from a hidden command screen. His face was calm. A Krill officer turned to him, hissing in its native clicks. "We did not expect such." Retaliation. Travan didn't flinch. The humans were always dangerous, but with dragons, he paused. "We'll need to use the null shockwave. Begin phase 2. Burn the nests." The officer hesitated. We risk waking the prime serpent. Trevon smiled coldly. Let it wake. We came for Volcran. We're not leaving without it. Back on the ground, Elise fought alongside her people. The dragons circled overhead, burning krill ships mid-flight. Some krill tried to retreat, but the lake itself boiled, driven by the firestorm in the sky. A golden dragon landed near Elise. Its claws crushed a krill. Walker in one step. Then it looked at her, eyes glowing like twin suns. You are the flame-bonded. Leader, the dragon said, its voice loud in her mind. Elise nodded, unsure what to say. The dragon lowered its head. Mount, we go now. Elise hesitated only 1 second. Then she climbed on. From the sky she saw the full battlefield. Ember Lake was half destroyed. Dozens of structures burned. Hundreds of humans fought in the streets, side by side with fire-breathing allies. She felt heat rising from the dragon's spine, but it didn't burn her. Instead, she felt stronger, connected. Every krill ship she saw, she knew how to hit it. Where it was weakest. The bond was real. The dragon's voice spoke again. The old war comes again. The stars forgot their place. But we remember. By nightfall, the krill retreated. They left 3 ships behind, burned wrecks now glowing on the sand. Hundreds of humans survived because the dragons came, but hundreds more didn't. Ember Lake had lost families. Friends, homes. Elise stood by the water as the waves hissed over charred metal. She turned to the dragons. Why now? Why did they wait until today? The golden dragons stared at the stars. They think we are myths. They think fire sleeps. It flared its wings. But fire never sleeps. It waits. In the shadows of the mountains, something even older than dragons stirred. A breath. Buried deep beneath the magma veins, a creature opened one molten. The war above had begun, and the real fire was still rising. The ash rains didn't stop. For 3 days after Ember Lake burned, the skies wept black flakes. They drifted across the valley like slow snow, covering the ruins of homes and ships alike. Children no longer played. Families huddled in quiet. Shelters. Even the dragons flew low and slow, their wings tired from battle. Elise Marlowe stood alone at the edge of the scorched town, looking west toward the mountains, toward the dragon nest peaks. That was where she needed to go, not just for revenge, for answers. Elise climbed aboard a scout flyer with Captain Joran and 2 others. The craft was old, but fast. Its hull scorched from the last fight. The air was tense. No one spoke. They all knew what she had seen, what she had ridden, a bonded commander. Only the ancient stories spoke of that kind of union, but it had happened. She had touched a dragon's mind, and it had touched hers. Now, something deeper called her from the mountains, a voice not with words, but with heat, soundless pressure, and memory. The peaks rose like black fangs. Steam hissed from cracks in the stone. Lava rivers flowed like veins between rocks. As they flew over the 3rd ridge, the craft stuttered. The power gauge dropped. Lights flickered. We're losing power, Joran said, struggling with the controls. Elise leaned forward. Shut it down. We'll walk. But she didn't wait. She leapt out. The team hiked for hours. At sunset, Elise found it. A massive stone gate half buried in the mountain wall. Its shape was smooth and curved, unlike the jagged peaks around it. Ancient carvings glowed, faintly with firelight dragon symbols. Human ones, too. Intertwined. Captain Joran blinked. This is real. It's older than any colony, Elise said. I read about it in the offer cords. Yet the first settlers didn't find the dragons. The dragons chose them, but only if they passed the trial. Joran touched the stone. What trial? Elise stepped forward. The gate glowed, the flame bond. Inside, the chamber was silent. Smooth obsidian walls reflected the firelight from ancient braziers. A deep pit glowed at the center, filled with slow-moving magma. Above it, a circle of stone platforms floated, held in place by nothing but heat. They were not alone. From the shadows, a shape stepped forward. Old, massive, red-scaled with cracks. glowing gold, an elder dragon. But this one didn't look alive. It looked ancient. Elise fell to one knee out of instinct. Her body shook. The dragon's voice filled the room, slow and thunderous. "You stand at the forge of pact. Speak your name, Flameseeker." "Elise Marlowe, why do you come?" "To bond," she said. "To protect my people. To fight the invaders." The dragon circled her, huge eyes burning like twin suns. "You already touched the bond, but that was a taste. Now you must carry it." Elise stepped onto the floating platform. Heat licked at her skin, but she didn't flinch. "I'm ready." The trial was not a fight, it was memory. Flame engulfed her, yet didn't burn her. She fell into a dream made of heat, light, and roaring voices. She saw humans generations ago kneeling before dragons. She saw the moment the first bond formed, when a human child touched a dragon's snout, and both eyes glowed. She felt that fire move into her chest, her bones, her blood, then pain. Elise screamed. It wasn't just her memories anymore. The dragons. Memories poured into her. Wars, loss, betrayal, a galaxy. Hunted dragons for their power. She saw Earth from far above. She saw the stars burn. And finally, she saw herself in the future riding at the front of a fleet, her eyes glowing red gold, flame spilling from her mouth as if she were becoming the fire. When she awoke, her veins glowed faintly. So did her eyes. The elder dragon bowed. "You are now flame-bound. The bond is whole." Joran stared at her. "At least you're not just human anymore," she said quietly. Then the chamber shook. The magma pit flared. From deep below, something roared, a sound so low it cracked. The walls, not a dragon. Something else. The elder dragon turned its head, scales hardening like armor. The prime stirs. Elise looked toward the molten core. "What's the prime?" The dragon's eyes narrowed. "Our god of flame, the first fire. It sleeps far beneath, but the war wakes it. If it rise, there is no stopping the burn." Outside, as Elise and her team returned to the surface, dark clouds gathered again, but these weren't from storms or smoke. Enemy ships, dozens, KRYLL reinforcements descending from orbit, and they were heading straight for the mountains, straight for the forge. Back in the command chamber, Admiral Trevan stood at the front of a warship. He pointed at the map of Volcran. "Bomb the peaks," he said. "Destroy the bond sites. Kill the flame bearers. No dragons, no resistance." A Krill technician paused. "The seismic sensors are unstable. Something is moving in the core. Something massive." Trevan smirked. "Let it move." He turned toward the window, watching the world below burn. It still won't stop what's coming. But far beneath Volcran, deeper than any mine or fire vein, something uncoiled in the darkness. A shape the size of a city, older than any empire. A creature with skin like obsidian, wings like smoke, and eyes of pure white fire. The prime flame had opened its mouth, and the world trembled. The Krill thought they had time. They thought the mountains were just mountains, that the bond was just myth, that dragons were just animals with fire. They were wrong at dawn. The first wave of Krill ships appeared over the Dragon Nest peaks. Black as shadow, silent as death, they hovered above the ridgelines. Dozens of them packed with soldiers, drones, and new weapons designed to do one thing: kill dragons. Commander Elise Marlowe watched them from the highest cliff, the wind tearing at her flame-woven coat. Her skin still glowed faintly. Her heartbeat synced with the deep rumble of the bonded dragon behind her. His name was Kale Wrath, white-scaled, fire-eyed, nearly twice the size of any other. He was not just a dragon. He was her other self now, and he was ready to burn. The Krill opened fire first. Sonic cannons shook the cliffs. Plasma rounds ripped into the rocks. New disruptor bombs designed to interfere with the mental bond between dragons and riders fell, like hail across the ridgelines. One dragon screamed as its connection snapped. It fell. thrashing, confused, wings flailing. Another was hit mid-flight. A web of energy wrapped around it, burning into its scales like acid. The krill cheered. Their leader, Admiral Trevan, watched from orbit with a grin. See, they bleed like anything else. The dragons didn't retreat. They rose higher. Kelroth launched first, his wings blasting dust and flame across the cliff. Elise held tight, her thoughts merging with his. Her senses no longer fully human. She saw the enemy through Kelroth's eyes, every heat signature, every flaw in the krill armor. She pointed toward the largest cruiser hovering over the center of the range. There, Kelroth roared, and they dove. The first cruiser never had a chance. Kelroth spun mid-air, opening his jaws. What came out was not just fear, it was a focused beam of plasma-hot flame, hotter than any weapon the krill had ever recorded. It tore through the ship's shields, sliced the hull open like paper, and set the engine core ablaze. The ship exploded. In silence, so fast it didn't have time to send a distress signal, one down 20-9 to go. The rest of the dragons surged into the sky, each one paired now with a human rider, bonded through fire and memory. The krill disruptors began to fail. The deeper the bond, the harder it was to break. And Elise's bond was the deepest of all. She and Kelroth became a blur of speed and flame. Diving through flak, burning through holes, dodging plasma bolts, the dragons didn't fight like animals. They fought like warriors. They coordinated. They planned. They hunted. Meanwhile, below the surface of Volcran, in a control chamber hidden for centuries, human engineers worked side by side with dragon emissaries. A new weapon was almost ready. Skyfire. Protocol using dragon flame and human tech. They were building a weapon that would change the skies. A railgun that fired not metal, pure thermal plasma, pulled from Volcran's molten heart. It needed time. Elise just needed to buy it. In orbit, Admiral Trevan slammed his fist on the console. This isn't possible. We broke their weapons. We jammed their minds. A krill officer hissed. They adapt too quickly. Their bond strengthens under pressure. Then drop the planet breaker. The room went silent, sir. The officer said, "You heard me," Trevan growled. "Drop the grav hammer. Shatter their core. We can't kill them from the skies. We'll break the world beneath them." Elise heard the transmission through her bonded link. A vision came. Through Kelroth, clear, sharp, and terrifying, an orbital weapon descending. A device so large it looked like a second moon. It's falling slowly, quietly, the grav-hammer. It wasn't just a bomb. It was a gravity drill designed to pierce the planet's crust and cause core collapse. It would kill the dragons. It would kill Volcran. It would kill everything. Unless they stopped it, Elise turned to the sky. "Kelroth," she said, eyes burning. "We have to fly higher." Kelroth's wings opened fully. Then let the void see what fire can do. It climbed, past the clouds, past the smoke, into the upper atmosphere where fire began to fade and pressure dropped. Still, it rose. The grav hammer was above them now, falling slow but unstoppable. Unless. Elise closed her eyes and reached inward. The flame inside her responded. A memory stirred not hers. But Kelroth's, the first Breatha, final attack dragons were forbidden to use. Too hot, too dangerous. It burned the dragon from within, but it could vaporize a weapon from orbit. Elise opened her eyes. "I won't let you do it alone." She reached back and connected the neural lines along Kelroth's spine, fully activating the bond. He roared in pain and power, and fire surged. The grav hammer never touched VO Elsa from orbit. Admiral Trevan watched it glow bright red then, vanish in a sphere of white fire that expanded and collapsed in one blink. Trevan fell back in his chair. What? What did they do? A technician trembled. That wasn't weaponry. That was ... willpower. Elise and Kelroth didn't fall. They floated. The heat didn't kill them. It changed them. Their scales, her skin began to pulse with molten light. She wasn't just bonded now. She was something more below. The Skyfire railgun clicked into place. Charged. Locked. Ready. Elise looked down. Now we answer. The fire didn't fall this time. It rose. High above Volcran, the sky rippled like glass under heat. The krill ships, regrouping in low orbit, began to sense strange energy readings from the planet's core. First tremors, then magnetic distortions. Then heat freezing fast. On the krill command deck, Admiral Trevan leaned forward. "Report, sir." A technician's voice cracked. "The planet, it's waking up." Below, deep under the Dragon Nest peaks, the fire vein pulsed. It wasn't just magma. It wasn't just lava. It was the heart of Volcran itself. Alive, the dragons had long sworn never to disturb it, not unless the bond was broken, not unless outsiders threatened the planet with extinction. Now, Elise stood before the fire veins. Core, surrounded by glowing runes and molten walls. Her bonded dragon, Kelroth, hovered behind her. His scales had changed, brighter, harder, like armor forged from suns. Around them, a circle of dragons chanted in deep, ancient tones. Elise stepped into the ring. She spoke clearly. They broke the sky. Now we burn the stars. Activating the fire vein wasn't just a switch. It was a choice, a sacrifice. To ignite the core was to awaken the fire that lived in every volcano, every molten river, every crack of the stone. It would rise not as lava, but as plasma storms fired like weapons into orbit. A planetary defense, powered by pain. Elise took a deep breath. Her hands trembled. Kelrath reached out his mind, steady in hers. "Together," he said. Elise placed her palm on the ignition stone. A spark leapt from her body into the ground. The world answered. Across Volcran, the earth cracked. Not in chaos, but in command. Magma geysers launched upward like missiles. Fire didn't fall, it rose, screaming into the sky with white-hot fury. The krill fleet had no time to dodge. One by one, their ships were hit from below. The first melted instantly, split in half by a column of plasma erupting from a volcano they thought was dormant. Another exploded as a wall of fire punched through its shields. Panic spread. "The planet is shooting at us." One krill officer screamed. Trevan grabbed the control rail. "This isn't possible. No planet can do this." But Volcran wasn't just a planet. It was a dragon world, and it was angry. In the mountain city of Ardra's spine, humans and dragons fought side by side as the last krill ground troops made a desperate push. But their weapons jammed, their machines overheated, their suits cracked under extreme pressure. Elise flew overhead. Kelroth roaring across the valley. Each wingbeat summoned wind and flame. They struck a line of advancing mechs, melting them into slag with a breath. A soldier below stared up, eyes wide. "She's not human anymore," he whispered. A nearby dragon rumbled. "She's more." Then the earth shook again, but not from the fire vein. This was different, slower, deeper, from the heart of the world. A sound began to rise low, steady, and impossibly massive. Kelrath froze mid-flight. Elise felt it too. Like a second heartbeat in her chest, she looked down at the mountain. Beneath them, it was moving. Rocks cracked apart. The ground split open, and from the core of the world, something began to rise. A serpent of black stone and burning gold, its eyes. Brighter than stars, the prime flame. Older than the dragons. Older than the bond. A being of pure heat. Forged when Volcran was young, Kelrath whispered into Elise's mind. The first fire. The prime didn't speak. It simply looked to the sky and roared. The sound shattered glass across 3 settlements. It bent trees sideways. It cracked the armor of every surviving krill tank, and then the sky changed in orbit. Admiral Trevan stared in horror. The stars were being blotted out, not by ships, by wings. The prime had taken flight, a creature the size of a continent, moving faster than any recorded object of its mass, trailing behind it. Fire, Elise, flew just beneath its shadow. Her voice, now echoing with flame bond resonance, reached every human on the surface. "All units, Volcran has risen. This is no longer a battle. She paused. This is a cleansing. One final krill ship turned to escape. The Prime struck it with a breath that turned it into light. Just light, and then nothing. Back on the surface. Silence fell. The dragons landed. The humans wept. The krill were gone. Not defeated. Erased the fire. Veins slowed. The magma returned to rest, and the sky finally cleared that night. Elise stood at the cliff once more. The stars sparkled. Kalroth lay beside her, his body steaming gently. She whispered, "What now?" Kelrath answered in a low voice. "Now, they remember." The stars were no longer safe. What once shimmered as peaceful lights now carried the memory of ash. Even in the void of space, the krill felt it that cold, crawling fear that came. Not from logic, but from fire. They had sent their armada to crush a world they thought primitive. Now their outer colonies. Whispered a warning, Volcron breathes. And above it, the sky had burned. Twice, in orbit above the planet, the last remaining krill battleship drifted silently, trying to repair its stealth systems. The captain, a four-eyed krill hybrid, tapped into the encrypted relay. Do not respond. It said to command Volcron is lost. They've awakened something we do not understand. The human entities are no longer limited by biology. Static. Then, an alert. Proximity breach. Too late, from beneath the curve of the world. A new shape emerged. Sleek, winged, glowing red-hot at the edges. A warship. But alive. It was part metal. Part scale, and behind it came more 6 in total. Fire class. Vessels forged from dragon biology and human technology. These weren't built in shipyards. They were grown in the lava forges of Ardra's spine, powered by living fire, piloted by flame-bonded pairs. They were not ships. They were skyborn predators. Elise stood at the bridge of the lead vessel. Inferna's vow, her hands resting on the glowing command spines. Kelroth's mind linked to the ship's systems. She didn't need to speak. The ship moved with her thoughts. Every engine pulse felt like breath. Every weapon charged like muscle. A new kind of unity. A new kind of war. They didn't fire immediately. They let the krill see. Let them feel the weight. Of what they'd triggered, Elise watched the last enemy cruiser turn slowly. Trying to retreat into the black, she gave the signal. The Inferna's vow flared its plasma drives, then blinked forward with sudden speed. The first shot wasn't a missile. It was Breatha. Plasma torrent drawn directly from the ship's core. Focused by crystalline emitter fangs, it ripped through the enemy's rear thrusters. The ship spun. Elise nodded. Finish it. Kelroth complied. In one sweep, the Inferna's vow tore through the krill hull, split it like a bone, and left the wreck tumbling toward Volcran's gravity well. No explosion, just silence. The dragons didn't scream in victory. They didn't cheer. They remembered far across the void, on the krill homeworld. High Commander Vraxis stood in his obsidian chamber, watching old satellite footage. Burned cities. Destroyed carriers. Ash-covered bodies. Dragons in the sky. Fire erupting upward. He whispered the words slowly. Fire. That flies. Another officer entered, trembling. They're not stopping at Volcran. Human dragon fleets have left orbit. Destination. Pause here, sir. Back aboard the Inferna's vow, Elise met with the other 6 flame-bonded pairs, all once ordinary men and women now, warriors of flame. She looked around the darkened war chamber. Her eyes glowed gently, heat radiating from her skin. Out. Enough to burn, but enough to remind them all what lived inside her now. We didn't start this, she said, but we will end it. Someone asked, what about Earth? The Council? They turned away when we needed them, she said. Let them watch from afar. We're not just defending Volcran now, she leaned forward. We're warning the stars, Kelroth's voice entered her mind. You are no longer just human. You are fireborn. Elise smiled faintly. We all are now. As the dragon ships burned through space, heading toward krill territory, Elise activated the final protocol. Message to all channels. She. stepped into the ship's broadcast chamber. Lights dimmed. The holocoms began recording. "This is Commander Elise Marlowe of Volcran. To any empire, any council, any fleet hiding behind treaties and walls, listen well." She raised her hand. Fire danced from her fingers. "You allowed our people to burn." Her voice deepened, the fire bond resonating through her chest. "You thought you struck a colony? You thought you broke a weak world?" A short pause. "Then, you woke dragons? You armed fire? And now, we are coming." The stars would burn. Again, and this time, they would remember the name of the planet they tried to break. VOLCR, where dragons rise and fire answers. The Fireborn came in silence. No blaring horns. No diplomatic transmissions. No demands. Only the soft hum of wings, mechanical and living, cutting across the stars. The Krill homeworld Vazcor had never been invaded. Their defense grid spanned half the planet. 50 orbital cannons. Hundreds of interceptor squadrons. 3 layers of fleet-grade shielding. Impenetrable, or so they thought. High Commander Viraxis stood in the Black Hall, surrounded by his elite tacticians, staring at the incoming fleet's strange signature. "Heat," one whispered. "Too much," said another. "It's not plasma. It's living fire." Then the readings changed. 10, 12. 15 ships, flame-shaped, dragon-forged, dropping from hyperspace without a ripple. The infernal bond had arrived. Inside the Infernus Vow, Elise Marlowe watched the Krill planet rise in the viewport. A black world, scarred by industry and conquest. A place without sunlight, without mercy. She felt Kelroth stirring beside her, the dragon's wings folded. Along the ship's outer hull, ready to tear through orbit like a blade of heat, Elise's voice echoed through the command bay. "This is not a warning." She looked to her Fireborn team, humans and dragons bonded, forged in pain, vengeance, and flame. "This is judgment." The Krill made the first move. As the flame fleet passed into outer orbit, 20 orbital cannons activated. They fired in perfect sync, but fire didn't fear beams. Kelroth unfolded his wings. "Let them see." In a blinding burst of heat, the entire flame fleet disappeared, not destroyed, cloaked. Wrapped in dragon-scale shielding that shimmered with heat so intense it bent light, when they reappeared, they were inside the defensive ring. Before the Krill could adjust targeting, the dragons struck. The first layer of defenses vanished in seconds. Flame-charged wings slammed into cruiser hulls. Dragons breathed twin jets of white-hot plasma that melted interceptors mid-flight. Flameborn riders fired beam spears, weapons designed to pierce armor, then explode from within. The sky turned red, then white, then black. Krill, command, collapsed into chaos. "This isn't possible. They're not following physics." A technician screamed, "We've never faced living ships. We don't know how to stop them." High Commander Viraxis snarled, "You don't stop fire." Back on the ground in a city of obsidian towers, the Krill unveiled their secret weapon, the Null Pulse, a massive energy surge designed to sever the flame bond cutting. The neural and emotional link between dragon and rider. Without it, they believed the dragons would go mad. The humans would lose control. They activated it. Across the battlefield, dragons shuddered, wings flinched, eyes dimmed, bonds flickered. Elise gasped, her connection with Kelroth rippling like a torn thread. But it didn't break. Not fully. Because Elise had passed the trial. She hadn't just bonded. She became the fire. Her body burned not to ash, but to light. She glowed from the inside, veins pulsing orange. Eyes like twin suns. She reached through the crackling void and touched Kelroth's mind. "I'm here. Hold on, feel me," Kelroth roared. The bond snapped back, stronger, and it spread. One by one, the other Flameborn reconnected, their hearts synced, their fire aligned. The Null Pulse failed. Worse, it fed the bond. The second assault began. Now they weren't just dragons. They were fury incarnate. Elise and Kelrath dove from orbit, surrounded by flames, smashing into the Krill capital tower with a blast so hot it fused steel and shadow. Inside, soldiers melted. Glass turned to dust. Weapons exploded in their racks. They climbed back into the sky as the building collapsed. No speeches, no mercy. Braxis tried to escape in a cloaked shuttle. He didn't make it far. The Infernus, Val caught him in the upper atmosphere. Elise stood. On the outer hull, face bare, hair whipping like fire, eyes locked on the retreating craft. She didn't speak, she just lifted her hand. Kelroth fired one final breath. The shuttle was gone. Below, Krill cities burned, but not all were destroyed. As the last line of resistance fell, Elise called for silence. "Leave the outer sectors," she told the fleet. "Let them live. Let them rebuild." Someone asked, "Why?" She turned, eyes still burning, so they remember. So every time they look up, they see a scar across their sky and remember the cost of touching fire. Back in orbit, as the Fireborn fleet turned toward home, Elise stood alone on the outer deck. Kelroth hovered above, his wings stretched, glowing faintly in the void. The bond was quiet now, peaceful. "You think they'll try again?" she asked. Kelroth's answer was slow. "Not while the stars still hold your name." Ashwood was quiet. The wind rustled through scorched trees that had once shaded markets, homes, and schools. Buildings stood half-melted, frozen in the moment the firestorms had passed. Statues of fallen defenders were now marked by dragon clawknot and destruction, but in memory. Commander Elise Marlowe walked the broken streets alone. Her boots crunched softly on blackened stone. Behind her, Kelroth waited in the clearing where their bond had first sparked to life. The war was over, but the fire still burned. It had been 3 days since the Flameborn fleet scorched the Krill homeworld. No retaliation came. No messages. No declarations of survival, only silence. The galaxy had heard the roar of dragons, and it would never forget. Now the Fireburn humans and dragons fused in mind, heart, and purpose, returned to Volcran, not as soldiers, but as keepers of peace. Yet peace was not what Elise felt. Not yet. Because deep beneath Volcran, something had shifted. The fire vein stirred again. But this time, it wasn't from anger or war. It was calling. Elise knew what it meant. The prime flame wanted release. Not destruction, ascension. The dragons had long believed their kind was born from the first fire, not just creatures of flame, but shards of something divine, something older than the stars. And now, with the bond awakened and war ended, the final step had arrived. A decision, one that only the bonded could make. Elise stood at the ancient gate to the core where it had all started. The others waited behind her. The Flameborn, some afraid, some in awe. Kelroth lowered his head beside her. "If you enter, there is no return. No more blood, no more war, only fire. What happens to us?" she asked. "We become part of the world. We seed the next bond. We pass the flame." Elise nodded, then looked up at the sky. "I wanted revenge, but fire doesn't stop there." She stepped forward, down into the core, past magma rivers, past dragon bones, older than civilization, to the chamber of emberlight, the very heart of Volcran there. The prime flame waited. Not a beast, not a god, just fire, raw, endless, alive. It pulsed as she approached, warming the air, the walls. Her very soul, her heartbeat matched its rhythm, and slowly, so Slolisol stepped beside her. They stood at the edge of the flame. He looked into her eyes. "We are more than fury now." She smiled. "I know." Then together they stepped into the flame. There was no scream, no heat, only light and silence and peace. On the surface, the skies shimmered gold. The volcanoes that once roared quieted. The wind changed direction, and every remaining dragon paused. Their heads turned toward Ashwood, and they bowed. The Flameborn knew. The bond had ended, but not in death. In legacy years past, Volcran rebuilt. Ashwood bloomed. Again, children played under the new tree grown from dragon seed. Stories of Elise and Kelrath became legend, not of warriors, but of guardians. A new kind of fire spread. Hope, and far below the planet. Within the cooling fire vein, a new spark flickered quietly in the dark, waiting for the day the stars would need fire again.